I am often asked, by the way, and even last night somebody asked me, what is the most fearful thing? What's the most fearful event that could happen that I'm the most concerned about? And there's a whole bunch of things, but there's one specifically that has incredibly dire consequences. And unfortunately, it's the most realistic event that's probably going to occur as well. Stay through the video. I want to show you this. And this is the number one thing we need to prepare for, and I'll tell you why. So I want to look at just a couple articles, by the way, right here. Texas power grid collapses after a huge thunderstorm, plunging 100,000 into darkness. And honestly, having your power go out for a couple hours, even a couple days, is probably a good thing. It helps you learn not to depend on electricity all the time. But because of this, even more so, we have concerns now ignited after the swath of solar panels are destroyed in Texas storms. This just makes you cry. I love solar. I love wind. I don't like how the administration is pushing it on everybody, trying to switch everything to electric. Our grid can't handle it. Our economy can't handle it. Our factories can't handle it. It is not a smart thing. But I love solar. And I would love to have a huge solar array for my yard. But of course, if it gets plummeted and damaged by hail, that's what nightmares are made of. This is obviously a really bad thing. But even more so, look at this. Amid explosive demand, there's such a huge demand for power, America is running out of power. AI and the boom in clean tech manufacturing are pushing America's power grid to the brink. And this is so simple. Utilities cannot keep up, and down go the lights. So the grid, long story short, is not anything you can depend on. And again, if the power goes out for a few days, or even listen, for a couple weeks. Up here in the middle of nowhere, Michigan, we've lost power for a couple weeks at a time, and we deal with it because that's what we're used to. The problem isn't losing power for a couple weeks for you and me. The problem is losing power for a couple weeks for the country. They get thrown into chaos. In New York City in the 70s, they lost power for just 25 hours, just over a day. And we're talking about over 1,000 fires, over 1,000 people arrested for looting. It was simply insanity. And that was just 25 hours. But you know, good old Biden, he doesn't care. His green economy will break the energy grid, and that's the direction we're heading. It's going to break us. The U.S. economy is in danger, not simply just running out of power, but our economy is in danger. After a decade of flat demand, electricity demand is set to grow by 80% over the next 10 years. 80%, practically doubling. The grid and good old Biden are not prepared. And because of this, we have an electricity crisis coming. AI, data centers, and climate rules are pushing the grid to what could become a breaking point, and this is where the danger kicks in. So a quick lesson on how the grid works. It's all based on frequency, by the way. In America, our electricity is based on 60 cycles per second, 60 hertz. And if you have too many businesses and such taking power from the grid, the generators literally lag down, and it goes from 60 hertz to 59 hertz to 58 hertz. And they will automatically trigger at a point where it gets to a certain frequency because the generators are simply bogging down so much that it'll switch and turn the grid off. And this has become cascading effects, and it will become cascading effects. So what's my biggest fear and concern? Losing power or, shutting off grids here and there is not it. I mean, we do take it as far as dangerous because remember, New York City in 25 hours, but even more so, we should take it as a lesson. What I fear is this. It's going to get to a point where our grid is so fragile, it already is, and it's right up to a tipping point, a breaking point, which we're close to it anyway, that eventually some kind of cascading effect or event's going to take place. There are so many, by the way. EMP, coronal mass ejection, cyber attack, the list, there's so many things I could list for you that could cause our grid to go down, not for a few hours, not for a few days, but we're talking about for years. So when this happens, there's two things we have to overcome. Number one, I have so many people say, and I'm with you, by the way, that, oh my gosh, that'd be great. Let's send us back to an agrarian society. Everybody just plants their own food and everybody's happy. Well, the happy part is the biggest problem we have to deal with because this transition from now to the agrarian society is going to lose millions and millions and millions of people because it's not about not having electricity. For you and me, it is. It's kind of like a nuisance, maybe. Maybe you're like, I have to hook up my solar generator to my freezer. We try to prepare and be ready for this. And hopefully that's what you're doing is taking steps. Like, for example, I've got numerous solar generators. I have a Blue Eddy that can power like a freezer or the fans for my wood stove. I have my Mango systems, which I'll link below, can power my entire home if the grid goes down. Practically speaking, indefinitely, because I charge it with my solar panels, even here in Michigan. Michigan's fantastic. People talk about, you're so up north and there's so many cloudy days. Understand that Germany is actually a higher latitude than Michigan is, and they have a huge swath of solar basically powering their country. It can be done. Don't let people tell you that it's too cloudy. It doesn't work that way. Sure, direct sunlight works better, but you can actually have your solar panels charging your batteries even on cloudy days. Keep that in mind. But anyways, my whole Mango system can power my house. So am I good? Yeah, I'm all set. No, I'm not. I mean, I try to be set, and hopefully you are too. You need to make it so you can transition to that agrarian society by having power for your freezer, for example, or for your furnace, or blowing fans from your wood stove. That's one thing to overcome. That's the easy thing to overcome. Because again, if we're going to be shifted to an agrarian society, getting there is the problem, and you and I may be ready, but the other 350 million people in America or the other countries are not, because 95% of the people, I wish I knew the exact number, don't prep. They don't have solar generators. They think that cow meat comes from grocer's freezer. It's that little styrofoam thing that's what produces it, right? I mean, lab-grown meat, it probably is. And so what happens is when we lose our grid, when we lose our infrastructure, we lose food going to the grocery stores, we lose cell phone signals, we lose your ability to contact emergency services, we lose hospitals, we lose every aspect of infrastructure for years. Bare minimum. Minimum means not anything less than that. Bare minimum of 3 years if our transformers go, like through an EMP, bare minimum of 3 years. More than likely over 5 years before your house has power again. Again, you and I, agrarian society, we're happy? No, because the other 350 million-ish people without power become violent, especially if you take away their food, take away everything that basically they have for security, because what's their life? I mean, think about this. Their life is, I go to work, I'm happy in my little cubicle, I go get whatever takeout as I go home every day, the weekend comes around, cool, let's go ahead and watch a movie go to the movies or watch a movie at home. All these luxuries are now ripped from them, and that's all they know. But it's not simply just having luxuries ripped from them, it's their whole mindset of, you know what? Government's going to take care of me. Everything's happy and fine and daisies and roses and stuff. Then once that rips apart, they suddenly start panicking and they're like, oh my gosh, maybe things are not so easy. And next thing they know, a few days later, they have no more food in their pantry, nor do their neighbors or their neighbors. Nobody has any food left in their pantry. And people start getting hungry and their kids start getting hungry and things are not getting better after a few days. They will become violent. This history has shown this. This is not hyperbole. This is not speculation. So listen, I'm all for mankind living in an agrarian society. But when we see over 300 million people in the country not be able to feed themselves now because the grocery store stopped delivering food to them, that's the bad part. That's the part we worry about. So listen, I like my Mango system to power my whole house. But the more important lesson we can take from this is understand our grid is so fragile, we're probably going to lose parts of our grid, if not giant sections, if not the whole thing possibly. And you have to learn to protect yourself. It's not about electricity. It's about sheer survival as people become violent. This is very clear, very well stated. This is something, historically speaking, we have seen before. New York City got violent in 25 hours. What's going to happen if we lose the grid for a couple of years?